Our logbook is a great history lesson for us. It's a wonderful reminder of flights we've taken and people we've flown with and aircraft we really enjoyed being in, but it is not directly an indication of your talent level. It could be, but it might not be. Hey, welcome back to the channel. So glad to have you here. If this is your first time, thanks for stopping in. Let's see if we can say or do something that you find genuinely helpful. You know, Pat and I recently did a video where we talked about how to log time appropriately. Is this PIC time? Is this solo time? Is this dual time? Is it cross country? There's all sorts of categories. You can look at FAR 61.51 to find out what you should be logging and how it's categorized. But it kind of made me think when we did that, I went back and looked at my own logbooks, and I have four different logbooks. And when I started in this business, I couldn't have envisioned that. I had my first logbook and I was so happy to put each new hour in, even though it meant a lot of money was going out. I was pretty darn happy to be building up that logbook towards my first 10 hours, my first 100 hours. It just kept growing. But there's an oddity we do in aviation where pilots ask each other or asking themselves, how many hours do I have? As if that's an indication of talent or actual experience or capability. And it could be, or it might not be. And that's something that we individually control. What do your hours say about you and your capacity to fly? Now, do me a favor and remember to subscribe to this channel. Now, I might be that pilot who gets their sport or private certificate, and that's as far as I intend to go. But I take my flight reviews seriously. And every once in a while, I fly with an instructor just because they know something I don't know, or I fly with a more experienced pilot because I may pick something up from them, even if it's not a traditional lesson. There are an awful lot of pilots who go out and get that tail dragger sign off because they want to increase their skills. And if you've never flown a tail dragger, you will find out what feet are for. It's a very different animal on the ground. When you're taxiing, when you're taking off and landing, especially if you've got a crosswind, you're going to learn an awful lot about how to use rudders well. Or maybe you go get a seaplane rating or add on a glider rating and you stay at that private pilot level, but you keep increasing your skill set. Or maybe you're the pilot who goes and gets the private, adds the instrument, gets the commercial, maybe even becomes a CFI and suddenly decides, I am the greatest pilot in the world. I have over 300 hours. I'm amazing. Gee, I wish Bob Hoover was still alive. I could share my genius with him. You know those people exist, and it's unfortunate, but they are out there. There's a lot to learn. And a huge part of being a decent pilot is being able to say, I don't know the answer to that. Let's go look it up. When you think about it, a pilot is actually a researcher, both theoretically on paper and in reality in the air. We need to gather information about our departure point, including weather, runway lengths, all that sort of thing. We need to gather information about our airplane. How much fuel do we need? How much fuel do we have? How much weight can we carry as baggage or passengers? How is our CG distributed? Center of gravity. That really matters. We need information about our destination. We need information about every place in between our departure point and our destination because the weather may change in there. We have an enormous amount of information to gather. And then we have to distill all that down to making that go, no-go decision. Am I really going to fly today? Or is it better if I just wait and go another time, if that's a couple hours from now or a couple days from now? That process is an inherent part of being a safe pilot. And if you're doing that routinely, and if you're taking your flight reviews seriously, and if you're constantly trying to upgrade your skills and your knowledge and your ability to make a good, safe decision, you might be an exceptional pilot, even if you're at the sport pilot level. On the other hand, if you start thinking you're God's gift to aviation, I know everything because look, I have this little card from the FAA that says so. Are you really getting 1,000 hours of experience, or are you getting 1 hour of experience 1,000 times? That may seem a little trite to you. It is kind of a cliche, but it's not wrong. If you fly from point A to point B on a regular basis because they have a great hamburger or a great breakfast special, or you just like the scenery, but you only make that flight when the weather's really good in the daytime with no chance of high winds or turbulence or low clouds, you're not really challenging yourself very much. You're not honing your navigational skills. You're not really honing your decision-making skills because you're doing the same thing over and over. You made that decision months ago, maybe years ago, and you haven't really changed the parameters very much. If you see anything inclement, you just cancel or reschedule. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not getting better. I talked to someone recently who has a goal to become a professional pilot, and one of their great concerns is that they don't really have the judgment yet to be a professional pilot. And my response was, well, of course not. You're brand new to this. You just became a pilot. It takes time to gain the experience, but it also takes the intent. You have to want to build that experience. It won't just happen to you. Over time, through flying, through planning flights and realizing how flights don't always go the way you planned, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Maybe the airport you were going to is unexpectedly closed. Maybe the flight you planned out now has a TFR that impinges on it, and we're going to have to go with a different route. There are 1,000 reasons we might make different choices on the same flight. Even if we make that flight repeatedly, the routing, the altitude, winds aloft. Let's face it, sometimes we want to fly higher to get a tailwind. Sometimes we want to fly lower to get away from that headwind. We make choices, and those choices get logged in our logbooks as experience. But that experience is only valuable if we're making an attempt to learn something new, to gather new information, and to benefit from all those little errors we make or poor choices we make. Those are the kinds of things that help make us a better pilot. I'll give you an example. I once flew from Waycross, Georgia to my home base of Winter Haven, Florida. It's almost directly south. It's a super simple flight, and because I was a genius, I was thinking, my basic geometry class, a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Smart guy. The problem with this theory rose up pretty quickly. Flying directly south towards my destination put me directly over the center of the Okefenokee Swamp, which is massive. There's also nothing in the Okefenokee Swamp. There are no roads. There are no open fields. If I were to lose an engine, I have 0 options. I'm going in the trees into the swamp where there's snakes and gators and all sorts of things I don't want to come face to face with, especially if I'm injured, which I undoubtedly would be. That's a great example of the practical as opposed to the theoretical. I can easily plot that course, that straight line from Waycross to my home base. There's nothing in the way. There's no restricted areas. There's no TFRs. There's nothing that keeps me from making that except good judgment. I don't want to be over the middle of the Okefenokee Swamp. I don't care how high I am. The irony of this is, a few years later, I was talking to a really gifted pilot, highly experienced, military background, terrific guy, and he flew out of Waycross, Georgia to an airport very near mine. We got into a discussion. He did the exact same thing, the same error I had made, and had the same realization in more or less the same place. Sometimes reality reaches up and slaps you in the face. The planning phase of this requires some imagination. The application of what I'm doing takes a bit of experience and practice. Can I fly a turnaround a point today as well as I could when I was a private pilot applicant working on it constantly? Depends how high the wind is, if I'm honest. There are tasks we engage in to get our certificates and ratings, and many of them fall off over time. When's the last time you actually did minimum controllable airspeed or slow flight? 2 very different things. When's the last time you did a power on stall or an accelerated stall just to brush up your skills on that? When's the last time you got seriously into lost procedures and just figured, how do I figure out where I am right now and where to go? And when's the last time you actually did a diversion for real? because your destination was no longer available, whether because the airport was shut down, the weather went bad, whatever the issue is. And the reason I bring this up is because we can so easily overestimate our talent, our ability, our judgment, even our ego. Let's face it, if pilots were actually honest and really followed the rules, there would be no instances of student pilots flying at night without their CFI's knowledge with a passenger into bad weather, but they do. We would never have a case of a VFR pilot flying into IMC knowingly when they don't have the capacity to handle that and becoming disoriented, coming out the bottom of the clouds, and unfortunately, once again, killing their entire family because their ego would not let them say, I don't have the skills for this. I have a thick logbook. I own this spectacular airplane, but I don't actually have the skills to do this. The safe move is to land and rent a car. The safe move is to turn around and go back home. Our logbook is a great history lesson for us. It's a wonderful reminder of flights we've taken and people we've flown with and aircraft we really enjoyed being in, but it is not directly an indication of your talent level. It could be, but it might not be. The decision is entirely up to you, and you don't have to tell anyone what the actual answer is. But every one of us has the ability to go through a bit of an attitude adjustment and make a conscious decision that the next time we fly, we're going to put a little more thought into it. We're going to put a little more effort into it, and we're going to take every opportunity to be the safest, most capable pilots we can be. And every now and then, even if it's not required, we're going to go fly with a CFI and work on a weak spot because we all have a weak spot. Some of us might have more than one, but if you're working on it, if you're honestly trying to get better, you're a better pilot, you'll have a better outcome in the long run, and you might even avoid that accident or incident that would have made your insurance unaffordable. I hope you'll take this in the spirit it was intended, and I hope you will have an outstanding experience and a very long career flying, whether that's recreationally or professionally. Now, please do me the courtesy of subscribing to this channel, clicking like on this exact video, and maybe if you're of a mind to, leaving a comment